You stand in the great hall, watching the man you have served for 20 years laugh with the very lords who plotted your ruin. The fire crackles behind you, casting long shadows across stone walls that have witnessed oaths sworn and broken, alliances forged and shattered like pottery beneath a boot heel. Your hand rests on the pommel of your sword, not in threat, but in memory of every time you drew it in his name, every scar you earned defending lands that were never truly yours. He does not look at you. He has not looked at you since the council 3 days past, when accusations fell like winter rain, and he sat silent upon his chair, fingers drumming against oak, eyes anywhere but meeting yours. That silence was your answer. That silence was your death warrant, even if your heart still beats. The smell of roasted meat mingles with smoke and sweat, the scent of too many bodies pressed into this chamber, all of them watching, all of them knowing what you do not yet wish to accept. You are alone here. The men you fought beside, the knights who shared your campfires and your bread, they avert their gazes now. They have already chosen their path, and it does not include standing with a man marked for disgrace. Loyalty, you have learned, is a coin with 2 faces, and only one side glints in the light. Your lands were taken first. Not dramatically, not with armies or siege engines, but with parchment and seals pressed into red wax. A dispute over boundaries that had stood unchallenged since your father held them, since his father before him. Claims brought forth by Lord Elric, whose estates border yours, whose son you once called friend until politics turned friendship into a blade aimed at your back. The documents were presented in formal council, words chosen carefully, lawyers who knew the old laws better than anyone knew the sword. Your lord listened, nodded, asked questions that seemed reasonable, but were traps cunningly laid. Where were you when these boundaries were first established? Can you provide witnesses to the original agreement? Do you possess the charter granted by the former king? You had no charter. Your family held those lands through service and blood, through generations of loyalty that needed no parchment to validate it. But law, you discovered, cares nothing for blood spilled or years served. Law is a weapon wielded by those who can afford scholars and scribes, who can twist history into shapes that serve their present needs. Your protests sounded hollow, even to your own ears. The desperate pleading of a man watching his inheritance dissolve like morning mist. Your lord declared he would investigate, that justice would be served, that all men deserved fair hearing under his rule. You believed him because you needed to believe, because the alternative was unthinkable. The investigation lasted precisely long enough for Elric to distribute gold to the right hands, to whisper in the right ears, to remind certain lords that his family held wealth and influence, while yours held only fading glory and aging knights. When the judgment came, delivered in the same hall where you now stand, your lord spoke of difficult decisions and necessary compromises. He spoke of maintaining peace among his vassals, of the greater good, of how sometimes one man must sacrifice for the stability of all. He did not speak of the gold that found its way into his treasury, of the marriage alliance being negotiated between his daughter and Elric's eldest son, of the political calculations that made you expendable. You lost half your lands that day. The western fields where barley grew golden in summer sun, the forest where you hunted as a boy, the village where families had served yours for generations. Gone, reassigned, their taxes now flowing to Elric's coffers, while your own income shriveled. But you told yourself it could have been worse. You told yourself that a loyal vassal endures injustice for the sake of his oath, that service means sacrifice, that your Lord would remember your compliance when times were better. Times did not get better. They never do for marked men, for those who have been tested and found wanting in the eyes of power. 3 months later came accusations of mismanagement from your remaining estates. Peasants claimed you demanded excessive rents, that your steward was cruel, that justice was denied in your courts. The peasants were Elric's creatures, coached in what to say, promised relief from genuine grievances if they would speak the words required. Your steward was a good man who had served your family faithfully, but good men break under enough pressure, and when he would not confess to crimes he had not committed, he was found dead in his chambers, an apparent suicide that no one questioned too closely. More hearings, more councils, where you stood alone against voices that blended together into a chorus of condemnation. Your lord furrowed his brow and expressed deep concern, appointed investigators who had already decided your guilt, listened to testimony that contradicted itself but somehow always concluded you were at fault. Your remaining lands were placed under supervision, their income now managed by officials who reported to Elric, who skimmed enough that nothing reached your hands but complaints and debts. Your household began to fracture. Servants left without explanation. Knights found reasons to seek service elsewhere. Allies remembered urgent business that took them far from court whenever you appeared. The final blow came quietly, almost gently, like a knife sliding between ribs with practiced precision. Accusations of treason, whispered at first, then spoken openly. You had been seen meeting with enemies of the realm, or so witnesses claimed. Letters had been intercepted. Forgeries so obvious you laughed when first presented with them. But no one else was laughing. Your lord called you to this gathering tonight, commanded your presence with words that might have been invitation, but felt like summons. You came because you still hoped, because 20 years of service must count for something, because surely truth would prevail against such transparent lies. But watching him now, seeing how he laughs and drinks with Elric, how his hand rests companionably on the shoulder of the man who destroyed you, you understand that truth was never the point. Power is the point. Consolidation is the point. You were an obstacle to an alliance that benefits your lord more than your loyalty ever could. Your lands, once divided between you and Elric, now flow entirely to Elric's control, and through marriage to your lord's family. Your destruction was not personal. It was business, politics, the cold arithmetic of feudal power, where men are merely pieces on a board, moved and sacrificed as strategy demands. The hall grows quieter now, conversations dying as awareness spreads that something is about to happen. Your lord finally turns toward you, his expression almost apologetic, almost regretful, but not quite either because he does not regret what is necessary. He calls your name, and the sound of it in his mouth feels like desecration. He speaks of sorrow and duty, of evidence that cannot be ignored, of how betrayal wounds him personally, but justice must be served. You do not hear the specific charges. You stopped listening when you saw the guards moving to flank you, when you felt the weight of inevitability settle across your shoulders like an executioner's hood. You could draw your sword. Part of you wants to make them pay some price for this betrayal, wants to die fighting rather than accept this meekly. But you do not because you are afraid, but because it would change nothing. And because some part of you still clings to the idea that a vassal does not raise steel against his lord, even when that lord has forsaken every principle that should bind them. So you stand silent as they strip your sword belt, as they take the blade you carried in his service, as they lead you toward the door, and whatever fate awaits beyond it. The last thing you see before leaving the hall is your lord raising his cup in toast, already moving past your existence, already celebrating alliances built upon your ruin. 20 years, and this is what they purchase. This is what loyalty earns in a world where power is the only truth that matters.